Thank you for listening to this episode.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_pod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Beane, at Chris Beane Official, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Beane. Today we're going to be diving into the future of music education with Patrick Boylan, co-founder of MuseFlow. Patrick's journey is unique. He transformed his own challenges with traditional music education into MuseFlow, a music learning app designed to help students learn piano through flow states and personalized practice. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
So, Patrick, what do you think today? Why would somebody want to listen to today's conversation?
This podcast is all about self-improvement, finding ways to kind of optimize your life, and you like to have conversations kind of around that. And I think what we've built is a perfect tool for just that. Music education is steeped in tradition. It's been taught this way for thousands and thousands of years, and we're reinventing it by putting sight reading first, the act of reading music at first sight. Because we believe if we increase the threshold of your ability to sight read, you can then learn pieces of repertoire much easier, and it's a lot more fun that way. Because that's the fun of playing music. It's creating those decisions on why you're going to play a song a certain way. Not technically trying to be proficient at your instrument. That's not fun, So we try to make it a lot easier for you to engage with the process of actually learning your instrument. And so, to optimize your life, to optimize your music education, to find flow in your everyday. That's what we're all about here at MuseFlow,
Okay. So Patrick, you went from an uninspired student from traditional music lessons to creating an innovative tool. Can you tell me about how that transformation led you to co-fund MuseFlow?
Sure. I did 8 years of traditional lessons, and I hated every little bit of it. My ADD brain and just the type of it, just the sheer repetition of these really boring songs didn't really work for me. Because the way that it works, I don't know if you ever took an instrument. Did you ever learn?
Yeah, I did. Let's say I did violin for like 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool. I'm assuming it's the same way that the way that I was taught piano, the way that I was taught clarinet, tuba, like all the instruments that I play, we were taught a specific skill. Here's a new note or a new rhythm, right? And then let's apply that to 1 or 2 songs if you're lucky. Go home, practice those songs over and over and over to boredom, and then come back to your teacher, and then they'll check it off as a perfect. Or if you fail, if you don't do it perfectly, then you go home and you got to practice that again. Was it the same thing for you?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did it work for you? Because it did not work for me, but I want to hear your journey though too.
Yeah. So mine was unique because it went exactly like that, except for I felt embarrassed, I suppose is the word, to practice at home around my family because it makes noise, and it sounded terrible, especially in the beginning. So I didn't feel very confident as I was doing it. So I didn't practice probably as much as I should have, which meant that I more often than not kind of faked it as I was going through the class. And I moderately did. I'm sure my teacher knew what I was doing and what I was up to. And it probably got to a point where like later on, 2 or 3 years in, I did actually start to practice at home. But if I did that early on, I think that would have been better. It would have been more enjoyable because I would have been more confident with it.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that drums, I hear that all the time. It's how do you get a chance to practice without an incredibly like soundproof room,
Yeah.
And I know a lot of parents actually put them out in the garage, or they create a sound studio for them down in the basement, but it still doesn't help. It's like, as a violinist, you're still going to sound like a mewling cat when you first start off. As an oboist, you're going to sound like a goose. It's just the way it is, So I think what we can do is maybe make it a little bit more personalized and create this little bubble for you. We don't really do this for woodwinds just yet, or violin just yet. But with piano, at least you can jack your headphones into your keyboard and really get into that immersive sort of flow state where you're locked into that screen and you're really going with it. Also, what's really cool is that the music that we have in MuseFlow it's generated infinitely, so it never repeats. And you're always being challenged at that perfect level where your challenge meets your skill, because you drop into the curriculum wherever you want to. So it's never going to sound like terrible to your parents, but going back a little bit, right? So it's like, that's the process of learning an instrument, right? You get a new note or a new rhythm and you go apply it to one or two songs, right? And then you do that over and over and over. Now, I just didn't like that because I was repeating so many songs, and I was getting really bored, and I was getting really frustrated because the harder and harder the songs got, the more and more I had to practice. I was realizing that it wasn't compounding on itself. Like skill acquisition, the skills that I was learning were only being applied in isolation to those one or two specific songs.
Yeah.
And so my teacher retired after 8 years, no fault of my own. He just retired, thankfully. I think I can't say that for certain, but I think he just that's what at least he told me.
Sure.
And and so after a couple of months, I was pretty burnt out, and so after a couple of months, I just went back to the piano because I did miss it. And so I found some sheet music my parents had, and it was musical theater. And so I found these little, I just started playing through them, fumbling through them. And then I found this one little phrase that I really, really liked. And I pulled that out and I just kind of put it in my head and I improvised around that phrase then, putting it in different musical contexts. I inverted it. I transposed it. I put it in the left hand, put it in the right hand. And I really fleshed that one little specific motif or phrase out. I felt like I really learned it. And so I was just like, cool. I just kept doing that method, improvisations just around these core pieces of music that I was really enjoying. Cut to college, I was one of the few acting majors that actually knew how to play piano. And so I played for all my friends. They threw musical theater pieces in front of me, and lo and behold, I was able to just play them because I had done this sort of iterative, immersive embodying process with these core concepts that turned out to be core concepts of musical theater. They're repeated constantly throughout different pieces. So I was like, that's really crazy to me. Cut to here in LA. I'm a professional pianist. I play over at 3 different places here in LA. It got me thinking a little bit, being like, what if there was a different way to learn? What if the way that I taught myself how to play piano, what if that was a way to learn piano? And so I was like, okay, I started going down the thought process of like, what if we put sight reading first instead of it being just this ancillary sort of thing that people never really ever tackle in traditional lessons? What if we put that as the engine of our curriculum and we had an infinite amount of sheet music and people just played and we gamified it a little bit? You have to get 4 phrases in a row to pass the level at 95% accuracy at gold tempo, and you're just going, boom, you pass the level. And then, oh my gosh, then actual repertoire gets unlocked after that. And then you go apply the skills that you've learned in the sight reading to repertoire. Whoa, that sounds amazing. And so I brought that to my music teacher friend. He's a private piano teacher, Steven. And I was like, what do you think about this? And he's like, Pat, no way. I've literally had the same thought. And so he pulled up all of these like notes on his computer and we just started going back and forth. We have like dozens of hours of recordings and of just us going back and forth and really fleshing out this idea. He brought in the idea of like, what if AI generated the music? Because that's kind of like how it would scale, because otherwise we have to write all of the music that you would be sight reading, and we'd have to be able to adjust the complexity on the fly for all of that. And like, it'd be really, really difficult to be able to do without machine learning or AI. And especially when it gets to the more complex music, this is what's going to unlock like, much more complex music as we go along. We just give the AI parameters and we train it on a corpus of music that is quite expansive, but it's already trained. There you go. So that's what he brought. And so then we just started looking for technical co-founders, and here we are 2 years later with three amazing engineers. One of them is a data scientist who's doing our AI models. Two of them are back-end engineer and then front-end engineer, respectively. They work great together. We're all really great friends, and we're building this product that we really love.
Wow. Okay. So a couple things I'd like to unpack there. So um, I, I have a little bit of history in music, but my profession now is I'm a professional martial arts instructor. So the
Oh,
learning,
really cool. Okay, great.
yeah, the learning, the skill acquisition that I can hold on to and is very practical in the approach. And so challenging the way of thinking about how to learn anything, whether it be an instrument or anything else, is really interesting to me because I've come across people in my martial arts career that have not took traditional paths. And so, for example, I have a friend who's a Navy SEAL and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He was the protege under his instructor, and instead of it taking 5 or 8 or 10 years to get his black belt, he did it in like 4 because he changed the way that he was learning the information. Instead
Oh,
of
that's
learning
amazing.
it in the stair-step process like what is standard, he made that learning completely different than what everybody else is because of how he thought about it. I think from his background being a Navy SEAL, and that skyrocketed in him. So he got the information and was able to grasp and understand it so much better than everybody else because they weren't just stair stepping through. So the idea of, okay,
Cool.
here's the basics, go home and practice this and until you're numb, and then come back and I'll show you more, is not always super helpful. So learning 1 or 2 or 3 things and then a variety of ways where you can insert those things or
Mm.
different motifs or patterns that you can build off of those handful of notes or moves or technical information that you know is a really unique way to challenge the sort of normal thinking about how to learn anything.
Yeah, we think about it as kind of an ecosystem here,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've got all of these different tools that you can use to improve yourself when it comes to music education, and we've gradiated them in complexity. We have level 1 through level 26 currently, and everything is associated with a level, whether it's a piece of repertoire or a sight reading level. And so you can go and work on these different things, asymmetrically whenever you want to, or one right after another. Of course, the once you pass a level in the sight reading trainer, then you can go apply those skills to the repertoire. That's how we've built it. But everything is kind of like free form. We don't hard code those unlocking procedures. They just show up at the end of a level on a modal that on top of the screen that says, hey, repertoire is unlocked. And then you can go click it. But if you went over to the repertoire library just whenever you wanted to and actually searched through, you would be able to see all the pieces and be able to play them anyway. So it's really up to you. Self-guided learning is a really cool thing. When you find something that works for you, do it. You know,
Well, and so
I
I
think
think,
that's so cool. That's the Navy SEAL dude is like a
yeah.
perfect example of that.
I think the self-guiding part is really interesting to me too, is from my time teaching, I know that if I stand in front of the student and help them, if I answer their question as soon as they have a problem with something, then they're not using their own brain to think through creatively how to solve that problem or how to fix whatever it is. If I give them the answer, then every time they have a problem, they're going to be looking for me to give them the answer. But if I
Yeah, totally.
just stand there and kind of, I think about this like I call it the spell check correction method. So when you're writing a paper, spell check really just kind of underlines the word that you spelled incorrectly. Now, in this day and age, you can click on it and say, okay, yeah, that's the word I want. But for a while, it didn't have that. It just says, hey, you spelled this word wrong, go and fix it. And then you had to look up to find out how to fix it. That challenges you to then to go out and fix it. So as I'm standing and watching my students, if they make a mistake, I will kind of say, hey, did that feel okay? Or did that seem right? Or let's work through that again to kind of call attention to it so that they can think about it. But I don't immediately give them the answer. I want them to do it. And then on top of that, I like to apply like a self-practice time, even in my classes that I'm teaching, because then what they're doing is, again, they're not relying on me to give them that information. They're doing it themselves. And so I think that having that self-teaching part
Love
is
that.
so important because then they're using their brain to fix those problems. And we know you can't learn anything without first failing. You have to fail, and then
Totally.
once you fail, your brain can override that failure with the correct part, and then you actually learn that skill, whatever it is, in order to move forward. But without that failure, without being able to experience what that's like to hear the note that doesn't hit or land correctly, or the pattern that is off, or the tempo, or whatever it
That is
is,
so true.
and your brain hears it, and you say, "Oh, that one wasn't right. Let's fix that." And by doing it yourself, you maybe have to ask somebody higher up, but if you can do that on your own to fix that, then you are learning how to diagnose that problem later on in the future. That is so much more important than just somebody giving you the answer.
So true. Failure is, and it's so cool that you say that, especially in regards to martial arts. And I'd love to hear how that applies in your world. It definitely applies for music. Failure is the only way that we're going to be learning anything.
Hmm.
And so we try to destigmatize that all the time. Here, I'll give you a perfect example of this, right? So one of our co-founders never touched a keyboard in his life, never touched a piano. The other two, one of them is a classically trained pianist, and the other one took like 12 years of lessons when he was younger. And now he's a bassist in a band, right? So you're like, okay, everybody's got musical talent except for this one dude, right? And so he wanted to learn, so he got a keyboard and he started learning with MuseFlow. He's on level 18 right now. And so first and foremost, we can actually see he's acquiring skills in a way that's compounding. And the way that we've kind of seen that is we were on a Zoom call once. We call these hackathons. We do it every Saturday, where we just go from like 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. and we just go. Very Silicon Valley, if you've ever seen the show, where they're just like deep in the weeds and they're just like going and cramming, right? Similar in that way. But anyway, Staley is his name, Steven Staley. He ended up pulling up his MuseFlow and he's like, I'm going to try some repertoire that just got unlocked, level 18, right? So he went on over to the song library and he clicked on one of the pieces and he pulled it up and he just started going, just started playing, right? And we see his face and we see the music because he's screen sharing. And the guy is getting so much of it wrong. So much of it wrong, but he's continuing to go, continuing to play. It doesn't matter. These are just rolling off his shoulder. And then he gets to the end and he's like, that's a great song. And we look at the accuracy and it's at 40% accuracy. And you're like, you just got 60% of the notes wrong, but you still finished the song? That's incredible. That never happens with with like music students today.
Yeah.
They mess up one note, they mess up a rhythm, they do that twice in a row. It's too much for them. They've got to stop, right? But with MuseFlow, we definitely we're trying to destigmatize that failure and let it be a part of that process. We're not emphasizing in any way. We care deeply about positive reinforcement, process over perfection, and praising process over perfection. You did a great job at working hard on that. Try it again. Instead of being like, you didn't get it perfect, try it again. We don't care about perfection. We don't. We just want you to get it to a certain threshold.
Well,
and then you've successfully, in my opinion, mastered that new skill.
so okay, so perfection is an interesting thing because in my world, perfection is not something that exists. Like, if I think about people think, oh, practice makes perfect. Well, that I don't believe in that, because I always use the example of how many times have you written your name? Ungodly number, right?
Right.
If you could go back, let's say you had amnesia, you forgot how to write your name, you were spelling it, but you spelled it incorrectly, and you write it 1,000,000 times. Is your name perfect? Well, no, because it's spelled wrong. And I can go a step below that or above that. However, after you've written your name, however many God numbers of times that you've written it now, is it perfect? And let's define perfect. Is it the exact same every single time you write it? No, we're human. Humans do very little, if anything, perfect. So striving for perfection will always set you up for failure. So in the music world, do musicians play the songs the exact same every single time they play it, or are there variances therein?
That's a great question, because I think there's two factors to this, right? One is technical proficiency, technical perfection. Did you play every note correctly with the correct duration and the correct pitch? You can ostensibly say, yes, you have, or no, you have not, right? So there is a perfection in that regard. Or you could say, then there's the very sort of amorphous blob element of musicianship, which is, how do you want to play the song? Why do you want to play the song that way? Give me reasons for that. Put words to it and say, what about this specific phrase or line makes you want to do a crescendo and decrescendo? Let's talk about that. Put words to it. What about the title? Makes you want to play this certain song in a certain way. Maybe it's called, Sadness on the Moor, but it's a very happy tune. What's up with that? Tell me about that. Let's explore that. Why would you maybe consider playing this song really sadly, even though it's technically a very uplifting tune? Those are not perfect. There's no perfection in there. That's just you as a human deciding on those things. Now that's the fun part of playing music, right? The boring part of playing music is becoming technically proficient at your instrument and playing the song perfectly. All we're trying to do is make that journey really fun, really engaging, enjoyable for you to do. Because right now it's not,
Okay, so you spoke about sight reading, and I guess, why is sight reading such a valuable skill, and how does MuseFlow help to make that easier for the students to do independently?
We think about music education in two different thresholds. One is, how complex of a piece of music can you play at first sight? Sight reading. That's one threshold. And then the threshold above that is, how complex of a piece can you play with an indefinite amount of practice? Not infinite, but an indefinite. There's going to be an end. You're going to be able to play that piece technically proficient at some point. How high is that? Unfortunately, the traditional ways of teaching focus the majority of their time on that top threshold. And they work at you being able to practice harder and harder pieces. And they just focus on that top threshold, not the bottom threshold. And so once that gap widens far enough, you're going to be spending so much time just practicing a piece of music to get it to a place where it's okay enough to be able to show people that journey is just boring. That journey is very dull and very arduous. That's hard, right? So we want to, and so joy of learning your instrument, joy of learning a piece of music goes down when that gap widens, we found. So what we're trying to do is raise the bottom threshold so that it's closer to the pieces that you want to play. So that when you have learned that new skill in the sight reading trainer and then music gets unlocked at that level, you can spend 4 times playing that piece of music and you've perfected it. Then you can start working on the fun parts of playing music.
Well,
Why are you playing
there's kind of two sides to this too, because if you are sight reading many different pieces of music, then you get an opportunity to be exposed to lots of different variances in the notes, in the tempos, and in I'm sure, the small skill set that they have at the given time as they go through the program. But in the conventional way to learn music, you are practicing these pieces of music so that you can go and perform them in front of people. And that's where the continual repetition comes in. And then once you go and do your play or your musical, whatever it is, once you go do the rehearsal and play for people, then more often than not, you don't do that again unless you do that show again, unless that piece of music comes up again. But being able to have a huge variance on the different pieces that you play adds to the catalogs of different small individual skills that each of those pieces have as counterparts that make up the total of the piece.
That's exactly it. We are putting those skills in such a variety of musical contexts that by the time you actually go to a song, you've already played that skill in the context that song is using it in. So say we're learning a E note, E4 in your third finger on your right hand, right above middle C. You're learning that, right? So we put it in all these different contexts to where you'll do the interval C to E as 2 quarter notes multiple times in the sight reading trainer, so that when you go to an actual piece that utilizes that interval C to E as quarter notes, you'll have already embodied that skill in that way, so you can just replicate it during the piece of repertoire. Yeah, that's just one example, but you're totally right. It's putting them in multitudes of contexts first, and then using songs to exercise those as well.
And I guess a way to do this, to apply some of this idea or mindset to a conventional way, would be to have the in piece of music that wants to be played at the concert, and then break down some harder, challenging sections there within. Find other pieces that have those sections in it or similar. Play those, and they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be wonderful. They just play through them, sight reading, and then work on some of those small independent skills. And then once you have those small independent skills, then you can apply that to the whole that would be the piece that you play in the concert.
I love that reverse engineering aspect. I think that's a really cool concept. We've definitely thought about that. Our ability to analyze a piece of repertoire and then break that piece of repertoire into its core essences, right? We have each one of those little exercises or those little motifs or those little phrases, and then we create exercises around those little bits. I love that. Though we are kind of doing it the other way, we're coming at it from the sight reading into repertoire way. I love this idea of breaking the piece of repertoire down into its essence and then exercising those essences in sight reading first, then go, yeah, that's a really cool concept. And can we steal that?
Yeah, go for it. So that's what I do. As I'm teaching martial arts, I know the end of where I want the students to be at. So what I do is I strategically design a backward stepping stones for them to do. Okay, this is where we want them to be at. These are the kind of hard parts of that. So then we work on those things as skills, build those up, make them correct, and then we can apply them to different positions, different maneuvers, different areas. And then once they have those small pieces, then they're doing the whole thing, and they don't really even notice that they're doing the whole thing until I tell them, hey, you just did the whole thing. What? I just did? Yeah, we've broken down all the little parts, made them fun drills, different activities, and move all around with them. And then we just put them into the whole thing, and then, oh yeah, that was easy. Yeah, I know. But if you just start out with the end, you're like, how do I get there? Just do this over and over again. No, that's not the way.
Yeah, that totally isn't. See, the problem with music education and in that sort of way, it's like you need a human to be able to guide you through that process so thoroughly. And we're just trying to take the kind of human element out of that. We're saying, here's the process. Let's not, no judgment from a human who's sitting over your shoulder watching you. I know that's huge for a lot of kids,
that's kind of the interesting thing about AI is when ChatGPT was just coming on online. I was playing with it a little bit. I thought it was really interesting because unlike let's say that the AI, that ChatGPT is the teacher. I could ask a human, a teacher, questions maybe 5 or 10 times, different kinds, and they tell me whatever the answer is. But they're going to get tired of answering my questions. They're going to get lazy with their answers. They're going to just say, okay, I'm done. Just go do something else. But the AI will just continue answering the questions over and over and over again and give you different tangents to kind of go on based on the way that the way that it provides the feedback and then the way that you ask the next question. So learning through AI, I think, is a really unique approach to alleviate that human element that gets bored, that gets tired, that gets frustrated with trying to answer whatever the student's question is, because the AI doesn't do that. It's going to give you the answer, and it's going to give you whatever the answer best of its abilities based on how it's coded. And then you ask it the next question. And then you can go in all kinds of different tangents and learn lots of different things. But the human part would try to confine that. The human part would give you the one specific no is the answer, and then that's it. I guess I guess I can't do that. But so I think that I'm sure you get feedback from people that you're taking the human element out of it. And maybe it is to some regard. I would say the human element is there because it's the human that's playing the piece on the other end. The AI is just coaching that human to be able to play to the best of its ability, to the human's ability, because of the information that it's providing. And then the AI, the app, doesn't get frustrated, doesn't get mad, doesn't get discouraging, is going to continue to encourage and provide exacting feedback on how to improve, because I know, and I'm sure you've probably done this as well. You get some high level players, and you're a human. You're trying to coach another human, and you listen. You something's not quite right, but you don't know exactly what it is. But if it's playing through a digital medium, and it can say, okay, well, this note and this note were wrong or off key by whatever it is, then you can know specifically what to change, and the human wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you that. Hey everyone, it's Chris Beane here from the Prestigious Initiative. If you're looking to level up your life and unlock your full potential, I've got some exciting news for you. My recent guest, Joel Gandara, has an incredible program called 31 Days to Become a Better Man. Joel has packed years of life-changing insights into this easy-to-read book, guaranteed to help you rethink your shortcomings and redefine what it means to be a man in today's world. But that's not all. Joel also offers powerful one-on-one sessions and group classes to guide you on your journey. And he has a special offer for the Prestigious Initiative listeners. You can get $19.99 off the program when you use code PRESTIGIOUS at checkout. Don't wait. Take your first steps towards becoming the best version of yourself today. Visit 31dailychallenges.com and use the code PRESTIGIOUS for your discount. And now back to the show.
Two things. One, to a later point for you. We'll go back here. We can recognize, or we're in the process of being able to recognize a pattern of failure in your playing. So say you've messed up this specific interval, for example, CDE, over and over and over. We can recognize that pattern in the back end and give you more phrases of music that exercise that specific interval, so that meta skill can get to the level of parity with everything else. We can do that we'll be able to do that very soon, over and over and over and over, in this very, again, flow state sort of way, where you're engaged with the process, but you're not even recognizing that this stuff is happening in the back end. This is just us making sure that you're up to snuff with everything else that you're doing. That's a really cool thing that we're working on right now. I love that. Pattern recognition is very much a part of that. And humans may not be able to recognize those failures in your playing to such a degree as our AI will be able to do that,
Yeah.
To your second point of that, we're taking the human element out of music. Here's the thing. MuseFlow can teach you how to technically play your instrument, and that's the boring part of teaching music. That's the go home and practice this piece. That's the no teacher wants to touch that. They want you to do that on your own, because in lesson, we're going to focus on something else, right? In lesson with MuseFlow, if you want to incorporate MuseFlow, which we do have a couple teachers that use it, use this as your practice tool, your students' practice tool. Say, go home and play, finish levels 1 through 5 or levels 1 through 3 of MuseFlow. Then come into lessons, and we'll focus on the repertoire that gets unlocked. The fun part of playing music and the fun part of teaching music is, again, that musicianship element. That, why are you playing the pieces the way that you're playing it? How do you want to play the pieces? Let's talk about crescendos, decrescendos, staccatos, legatos. Let's really use fortissimo, pianissimo. Let's talk about the specifics of the dynamics, the articulation. How are you playing this piece and why? Let's talk about that. That's the fun part of teaching music. And that's the fun part of learning music. So we're just outsourcing the boring parts of learning your instrument to MuseFlow. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
So we definitely do not want to take out the human element. We think that is the reason why we play music. That connection between the audience and the human playing it is only going to come through, not through the technical proficiency of you playing the notes correctly. That connection is only going to come through if you are making decisions on your piece and how you're going to play that. And so you're emotionally affecting the other person.
Okay, so Patrick, you mentioned the intersection of neuroscience and music learning. Can you share how neuroscience informs MuseFlow's approach to teaching, and why is that such an important thing for skill acquisition?
Well, we think flow state is a really cool concept, to say the least. The idea that you can lose a sense of time and fall into this immersive activity, whether that's learning an instrument or doing a sport like martial arts, I bet you find flow constantly when you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that groove that you get lost in, where the challenge is a perfect match for your skill. It's just right outside of your skill level. Because humans, I think innately, we want to be challenged, just a part of our DNA. And so if we can find that flow for you, or if you can find that flow for yourself, where that challenge is perfectly matched to your skill and you're just working just a little bit outside of it so that you're not anxiety ridden and you're not bored, you're right there in the middle there. That's where flow state occurs. And so if we want to always be engaging you in flow state throughout the entire process of your music education journey, from the simple trying to understand the new concept that we're going to be teaching you, whether that's the new note or a new rhythm or time signature, whatever it may be. We put that into this interactive tutorial where you're constantly going back and forth between watching a little bit of a video and it seamlessly enters into an exercise, and you interact with the video and then you move on, and then you interact with the video and you move on. That's very flow inducing. To the sight reading trainer, where you just press go and the music just continues to generate until you get 95% accuracy. Again, that's very flow inducing, right? So we're always putting flow at the core of what we're doing. Every feature that we're building is trying to induce flow state in some way, some form or fashion.
Okay, and I know it's in the name, but how does the user come to interact or understand that the flow state is the core, or even what the flow state looks like, or what it could mean for them and how to improve? Is there some sort of video or verbiage that happens so they know? Because I think so. Achieving flow state without knowing it is one thing, but being able to seek that out purposefully, I think, is important as well. So if you can set yourself up, get in a mindset, so I'm going to intend on reaching a flow state, and then go and do some activity, and then you reach that flow state, that would be better than just doing something, happening on the flow state, and then and so on. So is there some way that the end user is knowing that that is happening by design, or even a helpful quality to have?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We don't actively point out that you're, like a light shows up on screen. It's like you're in flow state. Like we're not we're not
That would
like
pull you out
doing
of flow
that,
state, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. But we're
But I
we're
didn't know if there
definitely
was
with our
like,
market.
let's see, so like onboarding or marketing would be like there to say, hey, this is what flow is. This is what it feels like when you're in flow. And then when they're using the app, they're looking for that. And then that will be like a self-referencing quality, that if they can do that, then they know, hey, this is the app. This is where I get the flow from, because it's you're guiding them by showing them what to look for. So by showing them what to look for, that's what they're going to find, and then they'll be more likely to achieve that thing. Does that make sense?
No, totally. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
And not
Yeah.
necessarily in like a manipulative way, because I don't think that's what it is, but in a totally helpful way, so they can get the best out of the app.
Yeah. I mean, in our marketing, we very clearly state it, learn piano, find your flow.
Hmm.
And we do it everywhere throughout our website and our promos and everything like that. So I think it's fairly geared towards people that are self-learners, that want to find a new way to play piano, and they come across our method, our flow method for all intents and purposes. And you say, oh, that might actually work for me. And so then they go into the app, and I know that journey has happened for countless amounts of our users. That's how they find us. That's what they're seeking out. They're seeking out a new way to learn piano. And so they come across our app and see that it's like flow inducing. And we're like, cool. They're like, okay, let me try that. And then they try it and recognize, oh, this is a better way to learn. So many users talk about flow state. So I could only hope that they're like actively seeking it out, but I couldn't really tell you if they are or not, which I think I'm okay with, because they're going to be seeking it out, or they're not going to be seeking it out. We have people that are using this just for sheer skill acquisition, but we also have people that are using this to find flow itself. We have people that that have hard jobs, and they're like 55 and they're 65 and they're like close to retiring and they're just burned out at their jobs. And so what they do is they come home and instead of turning on the TV, there's 3 people that do this, which kind of blows my mind. They've already beaten our curriculum. They've already completed everything that we've got so far. We've got 26 levels, which is Unit 1. Unit 2 is coming next year. But right now we only have 26 levels. And we just released our repertoire library. And so they're currently going through all the repertoire right now. But before that, they had completed every level. And so I'm like, why are you still using it? I asked. Why are you still using MuseFlow to these 3 people? And they're like every single one of them, all 3 of them said, I lower the beats per minute because you have to be at the certain tempo to pass a level, which is 72 beats per minute. And so they lower that BPM by 1 beat so they can never pass a level. And so all they're doing is playing level 26 and they're playing it for 30 minutes a day. 30, 45, 15 sometimes, it depends. But it always happens at the same time. And I'm like, what's going on? And so they tell me, they're like, yeah, I come home from work and I am pretty stressed out and I just really want to kind of like zone out and like drop into something that I'm being challenged a little bit on. And I just want to be able to just find that flow. And I want to just lock into something. And so I turn on MuseFlow. And so instead of watching TV or zoning out, they'll instead lock into flow state and just go. And to me, I'm like, if I was ever in flow state for 30 minutes a day, that would be incredible. That is a beautiful thing. And what a release and relief from your daily life. I'm like, that's so cool. And so the application of MuseFlow is clear there. It's like they're using it to lock into flow state, you know?
Yeah, and okay, so the reason I asked about the flow, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. The reason I asked about the flow state is because we talked about this a little bit already. In my martial arts training, I have been able to be in flow state for fairly lengthy bits of time and almost snap in and out, willingly. But I didn't know that that's what I was doing until somebody told me that's what flow is. So until I
Cool.
knew that, I didn't know that that's what I was doing. So that's where I thought that, if the terminology was there, if the like, it's not the word that I want to use, but this is what comes to mind: the indoctrination of what that means to be in flow. So they
Yeah.
understood what that is, then they would be able to better see the benefit. Like I said, because I know that I can snap in and out of that flow state now willingly, and I could do it before, but I just didn't know that that's what I was doing. I wasn't necessarily looking for the benefit that I could get by doing that because I didn't know that that's what I was doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes
Yeah.
sense. And I think that's a very interesting thing. I wonder if there's going to be people down the road that don't know what flow is, and then they realize that they've used MuseFlow and they've dropped into it, and then somebody finally points it out to them.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, I bet that there's going to be a lot of use cases that way for sure.
Yeah.
That is interesting that you had to learn what flow is to be able. I feel like that's just a very human thing, right? That's why we define things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We define things so that later on we can recognize them when
Yes.
they pop up.
Yes. Well, and so I started martial arts when I was 11. So I was relatively young, and I probably wasn't doing that then. But as I was going, I was popping in and out of this, but I didn't know it. And so when you have these users that are doing this on purpose, they know what they're doing, they're getting that benefit out of it, and they've already essentially completed the program, but they're going back just to challenge themselves to be in that flow state because they want to have an opportunity to kind of shut out the rest of the world. What a remarkable testimony for the app that you have built and the ability to do the thing that you set out for it to do. Extraordinary.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're very excited. We hope that this is the revolution that takes music education to a whole new level. The dropout rate is insane. It's 85% at the end of high school. And I think that, my weird, cynical side is like, what if AI takes over all the jobs and like we are left with nothing to do as a species? Our purpose has been lost. What are we going to do and try to fill the time? I think it's going to be learning new skills. I hope that that's going to be the case to improve our community, to improve ourselves. And I hope that music education is a part of that. I hope that there's a lot of self-learners out there that start to be like, oh, I kind of want to learn an instrument. Oh, what am I going to do? Oh, this is a very interesting way of doing it. Let me do that. I can do it from the comfort of my own home, or I could do it with a group, whatever it may be. Um, so I look to the future and I say like, okay, I do believe that this is a better way to learn piano and any instrument, really. What if we applied the concepts of flow state, personalization, put that at the ground zero of any sort of education methodology that we employ with our future generations? What an extraordinary revolution that would be.
Yeah. Well, okay, so using AI and gamification, uh, how does that come about in the futures within your app to help make learning more enjoyable?
Well, we don't look at gamification like the classic like badges and stars. We don't look at it that way. We use the term gamification because yes, we are creating levels, and we are saying you have to beat the level. And we're saying you have to do that at 95% accuracy for a certain length of time. Cool. Okay. So that is a sort of external sort of framework for a game, right? But we also look at it of skill acquisition, learning a skill and being able to recognize that you're learning a skill. That's its own sort of gratification and dopamine hit in its own right. We've heard people describe it as like, I'm just going, I'm playing, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm not really doing it. Take a big old breath, release, and I just continue to play. And then all of a sudden, something just clicks in their brain. Say they were at 85% for a long period of time. They were plateauing. And then something just clicks to be like, okay, no, this is the new skill that I need to be learning. This is me playing the new skill. Oh man, I'm figuring it out. Their accuracy jumps up to 95% accuracy. They say, oh my God, I'm getting it. I'm actually getting it. Holy cow, boom, you pass the level, big dopamine hit happens. And then you move on to the next level. That is its own sort of gamification. We've gamified those aha moments. And we're not doing it through external sources. We're doing it through internal sources. We're creating the framework for you to experience those aha moments and recognize them within yourself and then continue to move forward from there. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's how we think about gamification. We don't like those external factors of like badges and stars because we find them superficial. We want you to recognize your own acquiring of the skill. We want you to be able to recognize those moments when the neurons actually connect in your brain and you say, oh my gosh, I'm getting it. I'm actually getting it. And then you pass the level.
Okay. So is there any point along the journey of the student where they get an opportunity to reflect on where they're at and take notes or to interact with it that way? Because I know like, so when I'm learning something, whether I'm reading it or if I'm doing it, whatever it is, I take time after I get done with it to kind of refresh my brain and write down the different things that I did, how it worked and why it worked and all these things. On top of that, I also get a chance to like write through how it felt to do these things, almost like a rating score, sort of. Do you have anything like that in the app too? No. Okay.
No, that's amazing though. I think partially because I'm not like a big journaler.
Okay.
To reflect on certain things, I don't necessarily write them down.
Okay.
I think I just think about them. Yeah, that's it. That's so interesting that you're a big journaler, I'm assuming.
I am, yeah. Well, like and even now I'm a journaler. Even before, like when I started martial arts when I was 11, we didn't have like training aids like we have now. Now we have an app where there's a video of me doing the moves that my students could go home and watch me do the moves on the app, and I'm teaching the move to the student through the app. Did not have that when I was a kid. I took notes, drew little weird looking diagrams, and got home and had to try to, am I holding this upside down or whatever? Right. Try to decipher what I was writing. But I know that was impactful for me to actually grasp and learn the information. So now at black belt level, we call them accelerator prompts. And at the end of each class, I have them ask 4 questions based on what they did in class, just to help them to think about what they did. Because I know that part of teaching is to tell them what you're going to teach them, and then tell them what you taught them. And that last piece, I think, is really
that last piece. Yes.
yes. And so whether I do that last piece or I allow them to do that last piece, I think that that is really important to solidify that learned information, because then they know what they learned.
I guess we do it in a kinesthetic way. I guess instead of writing, like actually processing it that way, I guess our let's reflect on what you've learned sort of aspect is the actual songs that get unlocked. In a way, you're exploring your skill that you've acquired through those new songs. You know,
Okay.
it's a kinesthetic way instead of like an actual journaling way. But I love the idea of like, how did you feel? How did that make you feel? What would you like? And there's like just adjectives on the screen, and you get to choose which ones.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
like some of the questions I have them ask was like, what was your favorite part of class?
Oh, this is great. Right.
What did you excel at in class today? What do you need more practice on? And how and why do you intend on doing that? And what would you have done differently in today's class? Or something? I forget that something like that is the last one. But and maybe those don't all. I'm certainly they don't all apply. I understand, but those are kind of the questions just to get them to think a little bit more deeply about what just happened, as opposed, because sometimes you show up to class or you get into whatever it is you're doing, and you have so many other things going on. I suppose that's where the flow state comes in. It pulls them out of those other things into this.
Yeah.
But oftentimes those other things are overbearing, and they don't actually get pulled out of those, and they don't reach that flow state. So then they don't gain anything, especially if they're in a plateau. I'm just going to do this over again. I can't make it to the next level. I don't know what to do. And so causing them to really focus on those things or reflect back on those things, I think is important. I think that, like, when you go to the gym, you're not growing the muscles when you're lifting the weights, you grow the muscles afterwards. The brain is a muscle. So depending on how you interact with that, you could be learning and gaining insight, even though you're not sitting in front of the keyboard at the given time learning. I'm sure that you've had times where you've been in the shower, like, oh, that's what I have to do. And, you know,
actually, yeah. I have. Yeah. That's so interesting. I've never really thought about capitalizing on those moments in like a sort of gamified music education app sort of way. I'll definitely be thinking about that. That's such an interesting idea. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, if it's not helpful, that's totally fine too.
No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So many people process their thoughts through writing, through putting it down on paper. So many people, and so I think that is a blind spot for me. It's just like I'm not, and I don't think my other creative co-founders, Stephen Gizzy, who is the music teacher, we're both not like major journalers.
Well, I think that probably, so at least my experience from music class, you were there to play the instrument, and then when you got done, you packed the instrument up, or you closed it up, whatever, and you left. So it isn't necessarily presented in that way. And in like class, when you're writing notes down based on what the teacher is saying, and if you do that in the correct way, meaning you're not just writing every word they say, but you actually listen to what they say, then you try to think about, okay, what is actually important here? Then you write. If you can do that correctly, you can actually learn, therefore, what's going on. And maybe you go back and look at those notes, maybe not. Just the act of taking them out and putting them down, I think sometimes is enough to gain whatever insight that could be had there.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you're both like a kinesthetic learner, a doer. You've got to do it and put it in your body. What also are you? Is it auditory? Is it sight?
Visual.
Is it?
I think I'm probably
visual. Okay.
Probably like if I had to put it in percentage, maybe 75 or 85% visual, and then kinesthetic. And a lot of times, if I can see it, like if you tell me words how to do it, I'm totally lost. I have no idea. But if you tell me, if you show me what it looks like, I'm not 100%, but I pretty well can do that. And then once I see it, and then I get a chance to do it, I mean, it's not locked in there, but it's pretty well in the brain. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's interesting. I'm auditory. I digest information better through listening to it. So I love audiobooks.
Yep.
That's how I get most of my information.
Sure.
If I am like actually having to like read something and it's not on Audible, I'll literally have my iPad or my computer read it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
it's
it's important
crazy.
to know those things so that you know how to interact and learn the best way. And until you know those, you just have to kind of walk blindly through the forest until you can pick it, find whatever it is you're looking for.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining me and sharing MuseFlow's journey, revolutionizing music education, your insights to flow states, to AI, learning, personalization in the learning atmosphere is so helpful. And I want to ask before we wrap up here, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Uh, Consider different ways of learning. I think that we are so stuck in the paradigm of the traditional ways of learning that if you think you might learn in a different way, go and try to explore that in the best ways that you possibly can. You know, go take a martial arts class, learn an instrument in a different way. Do what you can to set yourself up for success. And I hope to be right there with you on that journey. Please let us know if you have any thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts on MuseFlow if you ever get a chance to try it.
And if our listeners wanted to go and check it out, what would be the best way for them to do that?
MuseFlow.ai. It's our website. Start there. Uh, Read through the website if you'd like, or just start the free trial. Right now, you need a MIDI keyboard, a MIDI compatible keyboard, and your laptop and Chrome browser. We're making an app later down the road, and we're creating an audio recognition algorithm right now that is it's really good. We just need to like fine tune it where you'd set your iPad or your phone on your acoustic piano, and you just press play and you start going, right, and it can listen to you. We're in the process of doing that. Universal accessibility is very important to us, but right now you do need a MIDI compatible keyboard, a laptop or a computer, and a MIDI cable to connect your keyboard to your laptop. So let us know if you have any thoughts on that. I'm here for it. Like, you shoot me an email, patrick.boylan@museflow.ai. If you have any needs, or if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, talk to me. I'll be able to help you with that. Yeah, I'm here for the conversation. So let me know.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And listeners, if you're ready to experience music education in a brand new way, be sure to check out MuseFlow. And thanks for tuning in to the Precedus Initiative. And remember, never stop learning.